This is Kathy Biehl of Empowerment Unlimited with a little extra message for the Gemini full moon lunar eclipse. And I'd like you to take a journey to the center of your mind and spend some time looking at the conditions down there from several different points of view. What are the words that you use a lot? What is the energy of those words? And particularly the energy of the words that you use to describe yourself or that you direct at yourself. Like if you drop something, do you say, oh, I'm an idiot, or oh, I'm so clumsy? Or when you're describing yourself to somebody else. What are the words you use to describe how life treats you? And that leads to, what are your stories? What stories do you tell yourself about what happens to you in life, about other people, about what goes on out in the world? Are those stories that you've been telling yourself for decades? Do they come from your childhood? Did somebody tell you these stories when you were young? Did these stories bear any real relationship to reality when you were first told them? Most importantly, do these stories fit who you are at this point in your life? And what's it sound like in there? Do you have a highly active mind in terms of the chatter and the clutter? And is there a lot of interference or jamming or distraction coming at you from the outside world? Do you have the TV or a playlist or some streaming service on a lot? Are you listening to the news a lot? Are you online a lot? Are you always holding a device? And what happens right before you go to sleep and when you first wake up? Is there any kind of downtime, emptying time, quiet time on either side of that? And consider that the time while your mind and body are going into a relaxed mode to rest for the night, you can think of that as like a doorway into your psyche or a portal into your psyche. And if you are feeding it with a lot of stimulus right before you shut your eyes and go to sleep, that stimulus is going to stay with you and mold whatever you're working through while you're sleeping. A story I like to tell about this is I have a friend who's a Gemini who has lots of TVs. And at one point in his life, I do not know whether it's still true, at one point in his life, he was sleeping with the news on at night, sleeping with CNN on all night. And the news was affecting his dreams. Now imagine doing that these days and what that would do to your state of mind when you wake up. You're not doing that, right? Okay. So, and then when you wake up, you're kind of in this moment, this little phase of moving from the asleep world into the waking world. And if you immediately pick up your phone, immediately pick up your iPad, immediately go on to social media, immediately turn on some kind of sound stimulus, you are jamming yourself. Think of it that way. So, are you done with any of this now? Any of these stories, any of these words? Is there anything that doesn't feel good? While you're pondering that, I have a couple of other real world examples to give you. They might give you some fodder, some stuff to think about. What words do you use to tell the story of your upbringing, your childhood, your relationship with your parents, your relationship with your family? Is there another way to is there a way to rephrase your experience to reframe it, or at least to stop using the same words. Here are some examples of the power of words, the power of thinking. Several decades back, I had a girlfriend who had the tragedy of realizing that her child had not died in an accident, but had been murdered. She and her husband went for a while to a support group for parents of murdered children, and she found it was actually making things worse for her to go into this meeting, tell the same story, hear the same stories, hear the atrocities, that it was fueling her outrage and anger and betrayal and just a lot of negativity. And she talked her husband into switching to a support group for parents of children who had died, most of whom had died through disease. And she stopped reinforcing the horror of her child's murder, and she was able to find some degree of peace and resolution. Here's another example of how what goes through your mind can really affect how you experience reality, and in fact, change your reality, and maybe not in a way you consciously want it. There's an old childhood saying, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me." To which I say, oh yeah, I managed to blow something up. We all know you feel a physical pain sometimes, you feel physical anguish, you feel all kinds of emotions unpleasantly at certain words. So here's my confessional on this one. In my 20s, I had a roommate with whom I had a kind of loose arrangement for communal items. We would keep a running tally on the refrigerator of certain things that we both consumed, like butter, milk, and we would trade off, in theory, replacing them, except that the woman I lived with didn't, to my thinking, follow through with her share of things, and more often than not, actually almost all the time, I was the one replacing them. Now, instead of having a mature, emotionally aware discussion, I was a screwed up law student. No, I just festered. And one weekend I went away. When I came back on the drive home, which was about a 2.5 to 3 hour drive, my thoughts kind of floated toward how this woman just was never carrying her weight in this department. And I chewed on it and chewed on it and chewed on it and chewed on it. And by the time I walked into our apartment, I was just boiling over with fury. And again, I am telling you, this was not an emotionally mature way to handle this. So I walk in, there are a whole bunch of people in the place. She's having this big gathering. I take my stuff into my room, go into the bathroom, no toilet paper. She had been there all weekend and had not replaced the toilet paper. She had taken Kleenex, I don't know, out of a common area, my room, I don't know what, and that was on the toilet. Could not have been bothered to get toilet paper. It was like someone threw kerosene on everything that had been boiling in me. I pulled her away from her party and I erupted, which is not something I do to people, and our friendship exploded in that moment. Understandably so. So, you might be able to think of some times in your life where stewing on something actually made it much worse, made your experience of it much worse. So, what now in your life are you finding yourself retelling and retelling and retelling? And each time you retell it, you feel worse. Maybe you have an interchange with someone and it kind of doesn't sit right, and you want to talk to a friend about it to process it, and then you talk to another friend about it to process it, and then you talk to another friend about it to process it, and by the third or fourth or fifth or whatever time, it just starts growing disproportionately to what it had been initially. Are you doing that anywhere in your life? Is that going on somewhere in the center of your mind? Is there some semi-dormant story from years ago that does not take much to erupt. What's taking up space down there? What's taking up space in there? What are you done with? This full moon is a really appropriate time to empty a lot of this. Full moons bring things to a head, often ridiculously so. Lunar eclipses bring a lot of revelations, and they can escalate situations into like 4 or 5 times the power, it seems, of a full moon. And they carry an amazing capacity for release, for jettisoning, for departure. So what garbage do you want to clear out of the center of your mind and kick to the curb? What are you ready to get out of you? Yes, there's a lot out in the world. Yes, it'll be really easy to see this going on with other people, but you can't get into their minds and clean their minds out. You also can't change their minds. But you can be aware of where there are people standing around spewing a bunch of stuff that makes you feel bad, and perhaps you don't go near that. There might be certain streams of social media, for example, that you just decide you're not going to walk down anymore, like a dark, icky alley in a bad neighborhood, in a dark, dank, dangerous urban center. What are you done with? What do you want to release? Here's a visualization you can use. And you go, oh, I don't want to do this. Well, maybe you don't, but this one's easy. Imagine that you have an endless stack of paper in front of you. It can't run out. As much as you need, it's there. And you have a pen. You have a pen that will not run out of ink. Yeah, we're going to do this old school. And you can just scribble down whatever you want to get rid of. Just scribble, 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 scribble. Imagine that you're scribbling it and you have a big box with a lid on it. And when you fill a page up, you throw it in the box and you just keep filling things on the paper, throwing it in the box, filling things on the paper, throwing it in the box. And if you find that you're getting sick of doing this, or that you feel time is running out, you can just start putting symbols down for it, whatever. But empty, 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 empty onto the paper, put it in the box, put the lid on the box, and then you can decide what to do with the box. Now, you could just put the box back in a corner. You could put it in a closet, but that's not the point of the current full moon. My invitation to you is to blow the box up, because we are heading toward a massive upgrade, reboot, different way of going through life. We will very soon be moving out of deconstructing everything in sight and building a new construct. What would you like to leave behind in 2020? Lots, right? What in your head would you like to leave behind? This is the moment to do it.